my pleasure to introduce my three panelists to you. But please, like I said earlier, please take notes. There's so much knowledge and wisdom that's been shared on this stage today. So it's to your own interest that you take notes and, take one or two. So our first panelist today is a tech entrepreneur driving operational efficiency and smart community living by automating property management across the continent. Mr. Chude Osegbu, who is the co-founder and CEO of Venco Africa, but he will be highly represented by the COO of Venco Africa. Please join me as I welcome Ms. Abiola Showemimo. Please, I cannot hear you. Put your hands together. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Hi. The next person joining this conversation is another co-founder and CEO in the PropTech space. He's a geospatial intelligence expert, leveraging AI, GIS, and blockchain to regionalize land administration, property verification, and special data transparency across Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, realtors, developers, are you here? Amazing. Please put your hands together for Mr. Nnamdi, co-founder, CEO of Sytemap. Put your hands together. I cannot hear you. Jensi, this is for you. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, sir. Thank you. The last person joining this panelist is a pioneering real estate strategist and housing finance expert. He is using digital innovation to expand property ownership and transform Africa's housing ecosystem. Please put your hands together, and I mean it this time, as we welcome Mr. Roland Igbinoba. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. He is the founder of PropCrowdy and Pison Housing Company. Welcome, sir. Okay, amazing. I'll just go into today's conversation. I know that our time is fast spent, and we have to get everybody to go into the after party. So we need to teach them a little bit before we do that. Mr. Igbinoba, I'll start with you. I remember seeing one of your videos, and you're talking about how fintechs, for instance, were not interested in their addresses anymore compared to how it used to be in the traditional commercial banks, right? You're talking about how many people know the branches. For Money Point specifically, you mentioned, because you're just going to talk about how fintech, how technology has transformed how the finance space is. And you mentioned that. And it got me thinking, I'm thinking, what do you think is the biggest opportunity PropTech presents for Africa real estate sector over the next 5 years?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the context you have set about that interview, I think it was an interview with Nairametrics.
Okay.
Where I was practically saying that the biggest developer to happen is not going to be a brick and mortar firm. It's not going to be a developer who is buying land or trying to acquire land in some places. Okay, and I'm talking about the Nigerian context and in fact across Africa. Now, the biggest developer is going to be the guy who is able to aggregate that entire value chain, understand the technology moment in each of the real estate value chain, and then intervene in every single point on that value chain. And let me bring it home. I'll give an example.
Okay.
So if I went to the capital market and I raised 100 billion naira, for example, right? What that automatically means is that every developer, or rather, developers within the place where I play will automatically start to jostle to build for me.
Ah, okay.
Because I have the capital, right? So if I'm a PropTech platform and I'm able to use the instruments of digital assets or crowdfunding, because there are regulations of crowdfunding right now with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And also, SEC has also created a digital exchange. So if I'm able to raise capital on the basis of these underlying assets. It means every developer is going to be working for me. So that's what I meant by saying that, look, in those days, just on Adjust Your Adogo, that's how you know who the biggest banks
Right,
is,
right,
right?
right.
But today, nobody's talking about brick and mortar for branches. So exactly the same thing is going to happen within the real estate market. And whether it is Nairobi, whether it is Botswana, whether it is Kampala, or whether it's Lusaka, the point is at every moment in that real estate value chain, technology has a role. I'll pause here now.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. When you think about it, over the decades, African real estate has been driven largely by relationship, paperwork, physical transaction. And today's technology is changing how we search for property, finance homes, manage buildings, and even construct them. Do we agree? So, this is to Mr. Igbinoba. Again, what do you see as the greatest barrier to widespread of PropTech adoption in Africa? Is it infrastructure, regulation, funding, digital literacy, or perhaps resistance to change?
I would say that it's a combination of different things.
Okay.
One of the things that I'll talk about now is the adoption, right? Because for PropTech, the people that you're selling the technology to are not exactly the people that will use it.
Right.
I'll explain what I mean by that. You're maybe selling to estate managers, facility managers, developers that see the value in it. However, they're not the exact end users. The end users are the residents of it. So we need to be able to determine what adoption would look like from their perspective, because that's where the numbers come from.
Right.
If you compare the number of developers or facility managers versus the end residents that would use your technology, you can see that the disparity there is a lot. And if there's no adoption at the end user side, PropTech is sometimes B2B to C.
Right.
So on the C side, if the adoption there is not optimal, it could be problematic. There could also be another barrier in terms of the partnerships that need to support PropTech.
Okay.
Because the technology is different. And you need to ask yourself first, am I solving the problem that the residents really need to be solved? And in order for you to solve that, you need reasonable partnerships in order to, unify the value in the ecosystem and deliver it to the end users. If those partnerships are not coming in the right way, your system might be regarded as maybe just a beautiful technology that's ultimately not valuable.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, ma'am. So I'll come back to you, Mr. Igbinoba. But more importantly, I want you to tell us how to overcome it. My question earlier was, what do you see as the greatest barrier to widespread of PropTech adoption in Africa? Is it infrastructure, regulation, funding, digital literacy, or perhaps resistance to change?
Okay, so for me, I think that in terms of adoption, right, you need a lot of, I think it's regulation and infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay? And if you have, so for example, let me focus on the finance part.
Okay.
So in terms of financing, the challenge that we had in the market before now was that there was no SEC regulation. So you have, of course, we were in this country, again, I'm taking Nigeria as an example, where you had a lot of agricultural scam, where people put money in agricultural products. Those days they were doing a lot of agricultural crowdfunding, but there was no regulation, and people,
right,
they went with people's money, right? Today, beyond the Nigerian Stock Exchange that we know, beyond the NASDQ, right? There's a digital exchange,
right,
where virtual assets can be traded, okay? But the most important thing is that the primary assets needs to be created, and that's where a lot of work needs to be done. So regulation is done at work, right? The next thing in terms of infrastructure, of course, you would require internet, which is the basic. You want to be able to connect. You want to be able to do a transaction and it pulls through. So I would say regulation and infrastructure, but the regulation is here already. I think the next thing is for the entire ecosystem to understand that you cannot use commercial papers to fund real estate transactions.
right.
You cannot use overdraft to fund real estate transactions.
Right.
You cannot use commercial loans at 38, 39% to fund real estate transactions. Because what's going to happen, the variables are a lot, and they are crazy. Okay? Because a typical life of a real estate transaction will be about 18 to 24 months, right? And within those periods, anything can happen. Even when the asset has been developed, the lifespan of the asset is not something that you can be using short-term finance. And so, if you look at the capital market, it is not been deepened. There is a lot of money in the capital market.
Amazing.
So we need to become very creative, because development is not just about building.
Right.
Okay, development is a financing transaction. And until the players in the market come to that point to understand, you know, and you will notice that I'm focusing a lot on the private sector, because everywhere in the world, what happens is that the private sector leads the market, and then government follows with regulation when they don't understand what's happening in the market. So it really behooves us to start to take a look at how do I use alternative financing instruments and using technology. I'm saying technology because we said that there's over 20 billion or $20 billion of diaspora funding that comes into Nigeria, for example, right? How do you tap into that funding?
Yeah.
Right? That's the big question.
Right.
And today we've heard a lot about trust,
Yeah.
which is the major currency, you know, that we need to have. And so we trust platforms can begin to generate funding, you know. And you know what this does? It also helps in terms of bringing about a lot of economic development, because people who would not ordinarily be able to get into real estate transactions or real estate investments now have the opportunity. So there's some sort of democratization of real estate. So if I had just 100,000 naira, then I can invest rather than waiting for ₦1 million to buy that piece of land.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, sir. So picking up from what Mr. Igbinoba just said, Mr. Oba, I want to come to you, because no technology initiative, innovation can thrive successfully without investment, right? So what needs to happen for Africa PropTech companies to attract greater local and international investment?
Okay, I think one of the challenges we are having as a PropTech founders is still, I would say, is negligent from the stakeholders in the sector. So most of the stakeholders have not yet embraced technology.
Right.
So everything still looks like, do we really need it? And like I have always been saying, the market people in the women has overtaken even the real estate sectors in terms of technology.
Right.
Because the market people in the women are now using Money Point, OPay, to do their transactions.
True.
While the real estate companies are still basically 100% manual. You understand? And these things bring delays in both allocation, building, approving of payment, allocation of lands, and all that. So if there is a way that the sectors can start embracing technology, I think there will be that handshake between the PropTech and the stakeholders.
Amazing, amazing. I like that. I really like that. But I'm still so interested. So beyond that handshake of technology, how really would they attract that investment from international bodies?
It's okay, let's put it this way, like what she said. If you have, let's say, a partnership with the B2B angle, and you don't have the B2C, how are you going to work? And you don't necessarily, as a PropTech platform, I don't necessarily need to go for the B2C. The stakeholders, the real estate companies are already working with the B2C. You understand? My own is to provide an infrastructure that can help them scale very fast. And once they are scaling, I'm already having users. The foreign investors can now trust me that I'm already having tractions, and funding will start coming.
Amazing.
So without that, nothing.
You wanted to say something, ma'am?
Yes,
Please go.
I just wanted to add to that PropTech founders also need to be able to connect to the end users,
right,
and provide value that would be useful to the end users. just like what he said, that's what will drive the numbers, and numbers will usually attract investors.
I like that. I like that because that leads me really to my next question, which is you talking about scaling. And I'm thinking, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs, developers, professionals who want to build the next generation of African real estate solutions? What's the advice would you give them?
I feel like I'm going to say the same thing all over again.
Right.
Just ensure that you are creating value. I think that a lot of tech founders get carried away with beautiful technology.
Right.
They get really excited with the fact that, oh, my technology can do this. It can perform miracles. It can do nice and great things. However, that's not a bad thing. The question you should ask yourself as a tech founder is, am I genuinely solving problems at scale with this beautiful technology that I have put together? If the answer to that is yes, then I think you'd be able to attract investors, and scaling may not be all that of a problem.
Amazing. I'll ask the same question to you, Mr. Uba. So what would you say is your advice to young entrepreneurs, developers, professionals who want to build the next generation of Africa real estate solutions?
From my experience, I wouldn't say is about the problem. You understand? I would say is about the people understanding. Like, let me use the field where I am. Most times you see these problems. Like, I've been to like 1,000 real estate events. We keep talking about land registry, digital land registry. You understand? We know the problems, but we are not fixing the problem. You understand? So that is actually what I'm seeing. So I'm not seeing, we understand that there is a problem.
Right.
And nobody is working with us to be able to see that these problems are solved. That is actually, so I see lack of partnership as the angle where we are having an issue from.
Okay, amazing, amazing. Thank you. I'll pick it up on what you said earlier, Mr. Igbinoba, about trust, how quality trust is, or how important trust is, right? So what, with rapid investment in technology and slow policy, how can government and regulators create an environment that encourages innovation without compromising consumer protection, transparency, and market stability?
Okay, so thank you very much. Now, remember, the real estate, the value chain for real estate starts with land, okay? And then you have access to that land. And then you have permits, you have titles. That's where the value chain starts from before you get to development, marketing, and financing. So just following up from what Nnamdi has also said is that government, what needs to happen? So for example, you cannot do blockchain in this country if you don't tie to the root of title. You cannot do any sort of technology on top a defective title. So this is where government really needs to partner with tech firms. Because just imagine, I'll give a typical example, right? BROG has done 100 billion, I think, is it 100 billion or $1 billion, right?
Yes, sir.
$1 billion, okay? They've delivered 5,000 homes, right? They have over 60,000 plots that they have sold. Do you know what's happening here? That's data. That's data that you can harness to be able to help all of the PropTech founders. But that data doesn't reside anywhere. If I went to Alausa today, right, those 60,000 plots that they have financed, I probably may not see them. Okay? And that's why when Mr. Adewale was presenting, he talked about the JLL Transparency Index, where you don't have any African cities in the highly transparent place. So the opacity in the market is causing a lot of problem. And that's the challenge with PropTech founders. I'll tell you, we have a PropTech association. It's about 160 founders. But you see, the foundation, which is regulatory and where government needs to play a role, is not happening. Okay? But kudos to Lagos State because they are doing a bit of work around that area. But that's what needs to happen so that I can stop because of time.
Thank you so much. Our time is fast spent. There's still so much to say.
Together for them. A very beautiful panel session. Please put your hands together for them.
Thank you so much.
Please let our founders join us and let's take pictures quickly. Thank you so much.